This is Josh Nelson, and to anybody who follows baseball, I know that some of you have been bloggers yourselves, maybe not in this crowd, but I know we have actual people who are Cubs bloggers and stuff, and this social media phenomenon has been going on for quite a while, but it's really become more advanced to where the social media sites are a wonderful source of news, and often I find myself going there even before I sometimes go to the conventional sources of news media because they're on it. And I date back to a time where I associated social media with, okay, I'm going to try to find out what's going on with the Sox rumor-wise. This is 10 or 15 years ago. And it was like going on there, all you'd find would be the equivalent of high school kids talking to each other. Just like, just trashing people, just kind of the general, not that some of that doesn't go on, but it's really modest by comparison. And a lot of the discussions now are very intelligent. I mean, you go through there, it's like people who really think and care about the team, and it's exciting to see. And you get plans like, what about this, what about this? And there's just an amazing awareness. And so I know that from following the site, although not participating, I knew that the Southside Sox site has become like the premier White Sox blog, and quite a few of the people aren't necessarily in the Chicago area, but I knew that Josh was, so I reached out to Josh to talk about this. And Josh is somebody who writes for them, but also he, more importantly, leads their podcasts, which are just sensational. If you haven't listened to them, they do it during the off season. It's usually once a week, but during the regular season, they're doing them twice a week, and they get really good guests and better guests than we get sometimes. But anyway, just really intelligently done. And during the off season, they'll go through recapping the previous year and then going, who's available, what's available, but bring in top flight people. I'm sure my interest is always in the draft, and with the Sox having 3 draft picks of the top 50 coming up in the draft at the start of June, I'm sure there'll be a focus on that, which is always well done. And so anyway, we have Josh here, and he's going to talk about this stuff. I'm delighted to have him here. So Josh Nelson.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let me flip this on the other side so the people on the left-hand side can actually see. Thank you for the introduction. Hopefully I can live up to it. It's an honor to speak to you guys as far as the Chicago chapter. As being I've been a member for less than a year now. My membership dues are actually due next month. And I am a great fan of the work that you guys have done from the Chicago chapter. When you're a Chicago White Sox fan, and I've been a fan since I was 6.5, 7 years old, so that puts me in 1991. Frank Thomas is the reason why I'm a White Sox fan. There's so much history with this organization that there's so much yet to be discovered. And the journals, the research papers, the books that you guys produce, I eat that up. So from someone that casually follows Sabre to the ones that contribute to that research, thank you. Because if you don't produce that type of work, fans like me that are quite young aren't going to come across it. And we may forget how great the 1919 White Sox are. Even worse, we may forget how great 1959 was for the White Sox, how great Nellie Fox was. I mean, we talk about wins above replacement. Holy crap, Nellie Fox was really good if you're using sabermetrics. And we don't think about that type of stuff, especially in present day. And, Richard invited me to come, and instead of just doing like a sales job, like, hey, we're Southside Sox, you should come read us all the time, for you guys being authors and historians of the game, I've noticed that when you're doing your research, you're using a lot of newspaper clippings from the Chicago Tribune, from the Chicago Sun-Times. You're using journals that were written back in the day, even radio broadcasts sometimes, to recount history. And today, I want to talk to you guys about what's happening with White Sox media as a whole, because I think it is transforming, as Richard has alluded to. And who knows, 10, 15, 50 years from now, somebody may actually use Southside Sox as a resource to do whatever research paper, to talk about how great Chris Sale was, or how crazy and stupid the Adam LaRoche saga was. was. So let me go into a little bit about who we are. If for those that don't know us, we are part of the SB Nation network. So SB Nation, which SB stands for Sports Blogs, actually started when an Oakland Athletics blog and a Chicago Cubs blog decided to create a network of baseball blogs. And that Cubs blog, for the Cubs fans, is Bleed Cubby Blue. So Al Yoen is one of the founding members of SB Nation. And the Oakland A's guys, having a technology background, coming from Silicon Valley, built this technology platform back in 2005. And it has exploded. Now SB Nation is owned by Vox Media. Vox Media owns Eater. Vox Media has gotten like $200 million from Yahoo to invest into the media network to continue growing. Because SB Nation now has 300 sports blogs under its network. It has a blog for every professional American team. It has even gone overseas to the Premiership, which Lancaster blog, not Lancaster, Leicester City blog, that has exploded. And believe it or not, even though the NFL those guys get a lot of views, mixed martial arts became like the dominant resource for SB Nation. Ariel Helwani, if you watch any UFC, you often see him reporting. He lives within SB Nation. And those sites get 1 million visits a day. That's how crazy traffic that they get. But for us, what we do at Southside Sox, we started off as just a fan blog back in 2005. Great year to start a White Sox blog. And it was just simply fans writing for other fans. Like, I have an idea, I have a thought, this is my opinion about the team, I'm going to write it. And since then, we have evolved pretty much into a media entity. And every single day we write about the White Sox. Typically have a morning column from our managing editor, Jim Margulis, which he's writing about whatever he thinks is important at the time for the Chicago White Sox. This morning was about Chris Sale. I know he's going to come up with a post about pitch framing. So for those that are interested in the new stats that are coming out, he's going to explain why Alex Avila should be catching Carlos Rodon and not Gianna Navarro. But we also do game threads. The White Sox are currently playing right now. It allows fans to go and pretty much comment about the game live with other White Sox fans online to kind of create that like bar atmosphere. You know, if you're at a bar and you're watching a game, you're chatting about with somebody else. What I do, as Richard mentioned, is I produce the Southside Sox podcast, which is in its 3rd season. Our first episode had 86 listens. Since then, for example, we had Chris Kamka on last week to talk about kind of like his job. And he always finds these amazing factoids and interesting stats that get onto the broadcast. And it's great to tap into a resource like that, because we use the podcast as a show not only for us to kind of talk a little bit more deeper about the White Sox itself, but also if we don't know the answer, I will go and find somebody who does know the answer. And we always have a guest every single week. A couple weeks ago, we had Jason Benetti, the new voice of the Chicago White Sox, on. About once a month, we have Dan Zaborski, who founded Zips. He'll come on to give us the updated Zips projections during the course of the season, which is always fun to kind of see where we started to, yeah, I said the White Sox were an 83-win team in February. Now they're projected to win 90 games, and this is why. And just educating our fans on what is constantly evolving. Richard said that he's interested in the MLB draft. Jim Callis from MLBpipeline.com and of course from Baseball America fame. I pretty much have him every 6 weeks, whether he's talking about prospects, but lately he's all about the draft. We'll have him on in a couple of weeks here. He'll give us who he thinks the White Sox could take at 10, 26, and 49. And we'll have Nick Hostetler, the guy who's actually pressing the button making the draft picks. We'll have him on the week after the draft to kind of explain why he picked the guys that he did and what he thinks of each of them. But the point of the podcast is, and the point of why we write and how we write the way we do, is for the White Sox media world. And I'm trying to diagram this as best as I possibly can. And I wish Phil was here because he can chime in on this, because he's been a player in this for quite some time. So on the right-hand side, you have the newspapers. You still have the Tribune and Sun-Times. Daryl Van Schoen is the beat reporter for the Sun-Times, and Colleen Kane is the beat reporter for the Tribune. They write about the White Sox daily, and that's just the beat reports. On the television side, you have Comcast Chicago and WGN Sports. They are running the local broadcast for the White Sox. MLB Network, the cable channel for the league, they talk about all the teams, but sometimes the games are there as well. Radio has been a very interesting story and dynamic this year. For the last 10 years, the games were on 670 The Score. They picked up the White Sox games after they won the World Series, so bad timing on their part. And then it moved over to WLS, which for those that know radio is a conservative talk station. So if you are a White Sox fan and you go from your games being on a sports talk station, which I love sports, I want to listen to sports, to I'm listening to Rush Limbaugh before the game. It's been an interesting dynamic this year. And ESPN Chicago 1000, of course, they talk about all things Chicago. And the digital, I mentioned MLB Network because MLB Network runs all of the websites for all the teams in Major League Baseball. And Scott Merkin, who's been covering the White Sox for 14 years, all of his posts are on MLB.com. And even Phil Rogers, when he writes his columns, are on MLB.com. So MLB.com, the league itself is its own media entity covering itself. It's really weird, but that's just the reality of it. And then I have this arrow down to web, and that is where we live. And it's just not where we live. On the national level, you have Baseball Prospectus, which has been a terrific baseball site, and has launched many baseball writers' careers since the early 2000s. You have Fangraphs, which is an excellent resource to look up stats and history. But now you have Dave Cameron. Eno Saris is also a writer for Fangraphs. He is going to be on the Southside Sox podcast on Monday. He'll try to convince everybody why you should buy into Avisail Garcia. Also fun, he lists the best baseball stadiums with the best beer choices as well. And Baseball America, they still have the publications, they still have the books, but most of what they do daily now has moved over to the web. And if you are very interested in the MLB draft, they just came out with the top 200 prospects, and they came out with their third edition of the mock draft. So if you're hoping the White Sox don't take a college pitcher, don't read that mock draft. And then Big League Stew.
With no hitter missing, so.
Yeah. Big League Stew for Yahoo Sports. This is the logo I could find. CBS Sports, Yahoo Sports, and NBC Sports. They have taken successful baseball bloggers, and now that is their job. It's a glorified baseball blog, so anything that happens at the minute is their job to pay attention to what's happening every single day and quickly write 200, 300 words on it, content out. Let's get some eyeballs on us. So that's what's happening on the national level for web as far as baseball media. And then you have local, so you have us, we cover the White Sox every day. Future Sox, I'm going to mention those guys. They cover the White Sox farm system every single day, and they do great work in the sense of doing in-depth player profiles on guys outside of like Tim Anderson and Carson Fulmer, like Danny Hayes. I had no clue who in the world Danny Hayes was before the year. Danny Hayes got hot in Charlotte before he just got hurt, and here's Future Sox had an in-depth scouting profile on him. And what's really cool too, they have the minor guys write diaries about what their experience has been like in the White Sox farm system. So they've been a great resource. We're actually tag teaming. We're going to be doing a live MLB draft show, streaming it. So I'll be hosting it, and Brian Billick from Future Sox will be doing the color commentary when the White Sox make their picks. And Baseball Prospectus has now launched local sites as well. If you're a Cubs fan, they have one that Sahadav Sharma started for them called BP Wrigleyville. Great site to go if you're a Cubs fan. Sahadav has now moved over to The Athletic, and I should give them credit and put them up here somewhere because that's also a new web platform where they cover all Chicago sports. Scott Powers writes about the Blackhawks, and John Greenberg writes, he fills in the gaps. He's been writing some White Sox stuff, and C. Angie, I believe, she is now going to be writing baseball as well. Okay, so that's a lot. There's a lot of places you can go to get your baseball information. So why Southside Sox? Why would you just go to us if you want to get as far as information about the Chicago White Sox? Well, the answer would be last year, we don't know. We don't know why you would come to us. Maybe because we talk about them every day. But very recently, as far as the engagement that we have seen this season, it has helped that they are 24-12 at the moment. And what's the stigma with White Sox fans? They don't show up. They don't listen. They don't read. They don't care if the team is not playing well. And people see a lot of empty seats to start the year, and they're thinking, well, here we go. The White Sox fans don't care. They're not paying attention. They are wrong, because we have noticed a 54% increase in web traffic in this season alone. So we went from 4.5 million visits last year, which was a record for us for a year. They did not do well, and we're going to hit about 7 million this year. Our podcast listenership, our first year was about 38,000 for the entire year. Last year was about 65,000. We're going to pass that amount this year, and we're on pace to hit 150,000 listens. So with the web traffic and the podcast traffic, we are noticing a lot more White Sox fans actually caring and coming to us to get that content. And I don't think it's just us that they're also coming to, but they got to be reading, they got to be watching. CSN reported the TV ratings. TV ratings are up 66% from last year. So White Sox fans do care, and the myth is that they don't, and they'll soon come, maybe June, July. But they are here, and they are paying attention right now. And the craziest, as Richard was mentioning, is social media. Last year, I think hopefully everybody knows Facebook. You go to facebook.com and you can like things. And when you like a page, it gets fed into your feed, so anytime there's any news or any content, it loads up onto your homepage. Last year, we had fewer than 3,800 likes. So when we post something, like an article that we did, we use Facebook to promote it. So if you like us, it comes up on your homepage. Well, a month ago, we had doubled that amount from last year. And now, a month later, we've added almost another 3,000 likes. And with this, as far as engagement that we're seeing on social media, and our Twitter followers has also increased. With the old model for White Sox fans to get that information, I'm thinking aloud here. My theory is that because we cover the team every single day, that instead of trying to piece the information from all the beat reporters from the newspapers, instead of trying to go in the morning and watch television, that it's almost became easier for them to just go on their smartphones as they're getting ready to go to work, on their commute, to go to SouthsideSox.com and get the information that you need that morning. And as far as some bullet points that I have here that I think the reason why it separates us from other areas. SB Nation is a terrific technology publishing platform. Like I mentioned, they host 300 sports platforms. And with the relationship they have with Yahoo Sports, if something we post, for example, when Adam LaRoche, that whole saga was happening that week, Yahoo Sports picked up a couple of our posts that we did as far as updating it. Because it's just easier for them to be like, actually this is good. It's like retweeting. We'll just take this and repost it in Yahoo Sports. So that gives us a great deal to cast the net and to bring more eyeballs onto us. And two, he's the co-host of the podcast, he's a managing editor, he's been a mentor to me, Jim Margulis. If you are a White Sox fan, you may have heard his name. I think he is one of the best subject matter experts when it comes to the Chicago White Sox today. Some other nicknames I have for him, he's the voice of reason. To be honest, all White Sox fans, we have a meatball side to us. We oftentimes get angry, and when we get angry about the team and get frustrated, our opinions get a little crazy. And he is as cool as a cucumber. Nothing gets him too riled up, and he collects all the information, and when he gives an opinion, it's very well thought out. And I think for the White Sox community, it's good to have somebody like that, because if you remember the 2000s, the glory days of Skip Bayless and Jay Mariotti writing about the White Sox, the "Let's run Frank Thomas out of town" columns back in the day, it's a completely different tone and taste to it. And he's really built up as far as credibility. So much credibility, he's often on the radio circuit, so Speaks and Goff in the morning. When they want to talk about the White Sox, they'll bring in Jim, and Jim will answer any questions they may have. Or WLS, when Connor McKnight, who now hosts the pre- and post-game show for the White Sox, and the pre-game show, he may bring in Jim to give his opinion as far as what is happening today. And he was just recently on ESPN 1000. He was actually on, I don't know why, but he sent me a text. It's like, hey, I'm going to be on Albuquerque radio. I'm like, and this was during the Adam LaRoche talk. I'm like, what is Albuquerque, New Mexico? Why do they care about Adam LaRoche? He's like, well, I don't know, but I'm going. So he just hopped on the Albuquerque ESPN radio station. And he's been writing about the White Sox since 2005. And the reason why he's not an ordinary fan blogger, and I'll admit, I would be, if I was just blogging, I'd be a fan blogger. I'm a fan, I write about the White Sox. My past history, I went to the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh for radio, television, film, which is a broadcast journalism degree. So I have a lot of experience in radio and television broadcasting, but not a lot of journalism experience, not a lot of writing experience. Well, Jim went to the University of Missouri, he went to their journalism school, and he works for the Times-Union in Albany, New York. So he's really close to Cooperstown. So he's done some really fun projects, historical projects, where he can just hop over to Cooperstown. I think it takes him 40 minutes to drive there. And he's a journalist. So when you have a journalist writing a fan blog or managing a fan blog, then suddenly the game changes. This is a guy that understands ethics, this is a guy that understands writing, and he understands how to convey a message through his works. And that has provided a lot of credibility to us, where we have become an authoritative resource about the White Sox presently. And looking at number 3, we talk about the White Sox when nobody else did. According to Jim, there was a great ice age in 2007 when the White Sox went, I believe, 72 and 90. And fan blogs just dropped off. 2006 was a fun year. They were the best team in baseball at the All-Star game. And then the Tigers and Twins got crazy hot in the second half. And even though the White Sox won 90 games, they missed the playoffs, which was a bummer. And in 2007, faceplant, and a lot of bloggers just gave up. It wasn't fun to write about the White Sox. But Southside Sox continued to do it. Sox Machine continued to do it. And 2013 and 2015, I'll be honest with you, it was not fun writing about the present-day White Sox. 63 and 99. At that season, they were 26 and 26 on Memorial Day. So if you do the math, that is a horrible, horrible record after doing. And it's not fun to write about a losing team, an aging team, watching your star, Paul Konerko, just deteriorate in front of you. That is tough to write about, and it's tough to talk about. But I think it gives you the discipline that if you continue writing about it, continue talking about it, White Sox fans that need a place to go get their information, I have somewhere to go. And I think that's why we're starting to see the engagement that we have. We have a great foundation, but the Score wasn't talking about the White Sox during this time. And if they were ripping on the team. The Tribune and Sun-Times, late last year, they stopped sending beat reporters to save money because nobody was reading, nobody cared about the White Sox. And lo and behold, 2016, they're 7-2, and White Sox fans on social media were irate. It's like, why is anybody paying attention? And now they're 24-12, and you're seeing articles all over the place. How great Chris Sale is, he's 8-0. How great Jose Quintana is. Adam Eaton, oh my gosh, Adam Eaton in the offseason, I saw 3 columns where people suggested that Adam Eaton should be the 4th outfielder.
Oh, yes.
Now he's leading the league in defensive runs saved in right field. And my hot take, soapbox moment, how much money are the Cubs paying Jason Hayward this year? Because Adam Eaton's out producing him. But that's what frustrates White Sox fans with Chicago media, is that why aren't you guys giving us more attention? Because you talk about Chris Sale, and then the next point of conversation is, let's talk about Jake Arrieta, and then it goes off to Cubs land, and White Sox fans feel ignored. And because we talk about the White Sox when nobody does, and we talk about the White Sox every day, I think has given us even more credibility and become more of an authoritative voice about the team. 4, we are part media. We are recognized by the White Sox as a media outlet. So all the media emails, press releases. We hop on the conference calls with Rick Hahn when he has them, when a major move occurs. We had Buddy Bell on the podcast, the assistant general manager on the show. At the start of the year to talk about the minor leagues and what certain prospects that he's keeping an eye on and the state of the farm system. So we do get access into the White Sox as a media resource, but we also have a viewpoint of a fan. We go to games, but we are not credentialed. So when I go to games, I went to 21 games last year, I paid. So I'm a paying customer. So when something stupid like Adam LaRoche's retirement is happening, if I cover it and I write it, I can be unfiltered. Scott Merkin does not have that pleasure because as a beat reporter, he's got to go there every single day. And he and I talked about this. It was his birthday that Friday when things exploded with the Adam LaRoche saga. So here he is, birthday, on vacation. Adam LaRoche retires and he's got to get his butt down to Glendale, Arizona to cover it. And he's like, I can't really, I'm filtered. I can't give what the fans, what they want. And fans want the pitchforks and torches. And he gets a bad rap. A lot of White Sox fans think he doesn't tell the truth, but he does. I've been in those media scrums. He asks the questions that they want. But because we are part fans, when you have something crazy like the Adam LaRoche saga, we can get away with saying, this is stupid. White Sox players, please get your head out of your butts. Adam Eaton, do not call Drake LaRoche a 14-year-old a leader in the clubhouse, because that doesn't make any sense. We can get away writing that. They cannot, because if they do, man, that ruins every relationship they have, and they have an entire season they got to write about and cover. So that also, I think, gives us a bit of an advantage as well. And then finally, if you listen to the podcast, I don't say we're the SB Nation blog for the Chicago White Sox. I call us the SB Nation community site for the Chicago White Sox because that's what we became. I think with a lot of media today, if Phil Rogers writes a column about Chris Sale and Jake Arrieta and their historical seasons, we go and read that, but we don't stay. We read, we click off, we move on. In Southside Sox, what I have noticed is that people read and then they stay. In the comments section, some of the dumbest baseball conversations I've ever been with have been in there, but some of the smartest baseball conversations as well, where it just becomes very engaging. It's just not comments like, oh, this was a great article, thanks for writing it. No, it's questions, and those questions get answered, and it's just not being answered by the author, it's being answered by other White Sox fans. And the way that Jim writes, oftentimes he's thinking aloud. He's not saying this is what it is. He's just pondering, is this the way that it's happening? And it allows fans to kind of chime in and do some research, go to Baseball Reference and Fangraphs, and just kind of develop either theories or try to find answers for one another so we can better understand what's happening. And we also have a meetup every year, and this was from last year's meetup, where all those that are part of Southside Sox, that read it, fans, once a year we go to a White Sox game and we meet each other face to face. I think this year we have someone coming from Canada, we have someone coming from California, Seattle, and Rhode Island to come to the meetup, so it's very exciting. And just to kind of recap, because again, like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, I think for the authors here, the historians, when you're doing your research for the White Sox, you use the Sun-Times and you use the Tribune because they are the authoritative voice during that time period, where they are getting access to the story, and they are getting the information and the quotes. And you can use that so when you write about the history, let's say in 1919 for the Chicago White Sox, you have the real information, you have collected the opinions of what the public and society thought of that time period. And our goal is to become essential for White Sox fans, that every day they can come to SouthsideSox.com and get their news, get their information, listen to the podcast. If you don't like what 670 The Score's talking about the White Sox, listen on Mondays, download our show. And now we have a live show during the week, which I'll talk to a little bit more in a moment. But our goal is to become the must-visit site for White Sox fans, and it'd just be so cool 10, 15, 20 years down the road that somebody sources what's outside Sox and research. Now for some fun. A little couple trivia questions I have for you. So back in 2012, the Southside Sox community created a nickname for one of the current players in the Chicago White Sox. Since then, it is the official nickname on the player's baseball reference page, and it was on his trading cards last year. So I'm asking the audience, I even have a prize for you. Who is that player?
I know the answer, but
Does anybody else know?
yeah.
I'm sure Kemka knows.
Yeah, we should stay out of it though.
I mean, give me
See if
people
you
an
can
opportunity.
even guess which player it is.
Yeah, you just have to guess the player, and I need to know
Just get the
nickname.
player, even if you don't know the name.
Yeah, 25 options and choices. All right, Joe, you can go ahead and answer.
Oh,
Yeah, it's Chris Sale.
It's Chris
It's the
Sale.
condor, because he looks like a condor.
Yes. So that's what we designed. We have shirts and everything,
Yes.
and we donated the profits to the Chicago White Sox Amateur City Elite. It's their inner city baseball program where they given out. It started off giving an opportunity for kids on the south side of Chicago to play the sport, and now it has become a baseball factory. If you're following the MLB draft, Corey Ray, the outfielder from Louisville, he is going to be a top 10 pick. He comes from the A's program.
If you saw Baseball America's draft number 2, they had him falling down to the Sox,
Which would be amazing.
Oh, it'd be amazing. It's not going to happen. As soon as I saw that, it's like, are you kidding? He's not getting down to 10. It'd be awesome.
It would
Of
be
course
awesome.
they'd take him.
So this is the reason why we call him the condor.
Yeah.
Inverted W. If you look at a condor, there he is. We got it on Baseball Reference, and we were able to, it just gained popularity. So it is Topps baseball card last year. Boom, they have it right there.
all the time.
Speaking of Chris
Do they
Sale,
do they have a footnote giving you credit for?
nope, of course not. Of course not. So I had Brooks Boyer on, who's the chief marketing officer with the White Sox, and he and I have a deal. If the nickname catches on and the shirts do so well that I get a cease and desist letter from the FBI for selling an image, a copyrighted image without permission, he will rename the K-Zone to the Condors Nest. So I have to get in trouble with the FBI to win that bet. No small feat. Okay, the second trivia question, which is timely. Chris Sale is 8-0 to start 2016. John Garland also started 8-0 in 2005. Eddie Seacoat, Knuckles, he holds the team record for most consecutive wins to start a season by a White Sox pitcher. How many wins in a row did Seacoat win?
12.
That is correct.
But there was 2 relief appearances mixed in there, one of which was a loss.
Well, blame Baseball Reference. In 1919, he won his first 12 decisions. He was 12-0. He actually finished the year 29-7. Just look at the innings pitched compared to what we see today. 306 2/3 innings pitched, 30 complete games. The only thing that Chris Sale may actually beat is the 1.82 ERA, which would be insane to finish the year. So what's next for us as somebody, as a media resource that writes about the team, that podcasts the team? We're really buying into the whole idea to try to give more to White Sox fans and to try to fill in the gaps that are missing right now within White Sox media. We have a live show now called Southside Sox Live. It's typically Wednesdays or Thursdays where we actually stream live online. In a way, it is competing against the live talk shows for Chicago sports. 30 minutes recapping the series that just occurred. So next week we'll be recapping the Houston Astros series, and we will be previewing the Kansas City Royals series on that show. Just deep dive, break all the games down. This is what we're really happy with. Here are some red flags. All right, let's preview the Kansas City Royals series. Because again, White Sox fans, they have a need for it. They're hungry for it. Not a lot of people are doing it in the current media today. And we also have a key sponsor, Connie's Pizza. It is now sponsoring not only the podcast, but also Southside Sox Live. And then in the future, a lot of writing, a lot of audio, so of course the next step would be video. And the great equalizer today in media is social media. And if you are a key subject matter expert, whether a historian, author, or you want to start baseball blogging, Twitter is your best friend. because it's not only a way you can promote your work, but it's a way where you can voice your opinion. And it's a way that you can gain followers and have conversations online. And when things breaking news happens, if you have an opinion that many people like, you will continue to gain followers, and that is a way you can become a subject matter expert. Facebook, again, we promote our stories there, gets more eyeballs hopefully means more readers, and now Facebook is going to create something called Facebook Live. Today, it's on the phone. So in the near future, when something does happen, let's say Chris Sale breaks Seacoast's record, he starts the year 13-0. We may go on the phone and go live video just to talk about it with fans. Live video was only allowed to television stations a decade ago, but thanks to YouTube, an app called have the ability to compete against Dan Hayes on Comcast Chicago. So social media has been the great equalizer when it comes to media, and even the big media folks, they have live TV stations that they can use. You're gonna start seeing them pull out the smartphone and be like, forget the camera guy, I got this. And they'll be just talking to their smartphone to do video. So that's what's gonna be coming as far as the site. Very excited for that. And then for you guys, the Sabre community, we have done historical projects and features in the past that you may be interested in. The big one is during 2014, the White Sox weren't very good. Jim Margulis did a
Wonderful job.
every single day during the off season, because that's when the World Tour occurred. He recapped the 1913-1914 World Tour between the New York Giants and the Chicago White Sox. It was fascinating on all the side stories, especially how life was on the boat. I believe it was the Lusitania? Yes, Lusitania.
Yes, it was. This is
They took,
the one that was later.
which huge
shut
historical
down.
significance.
Yes.
Especially when it happened a couple years later. And he had articles for every single day. And if you are a White Sox history buff, I highly recommend it. It has its own place on SouthsideSox.com, where you can learn about the tour itself, what happened at each location. They played baseball by the pyramids in Cairo, and there are photos of it.
Yeah.
And Jim went to Cooperstown to access some of the archives they had from the tour, was able to take pictures of it, take some video. So it's really great stuff. The historical piece I did last year, if you remember Ken Berry, the former Chicago White Sox center fielder.
Jumping over the fence. Everybody
Yeah,
remembers
Bandit.
that. Oh, man.
I interviewed him about his lone All-Star appearance in 1967, and oftentimes when you talk to baseball players about that type of honor, they brag about it. He hated it. So it's a very interesting perspective on how a player whose only All-Star appearance that he ever made, and he did not get a chance to enjoy it. And a lot of drama on how he even made the team. So it was pretty fascinating to speak to Ken Berry about that. And Rob Hart, for the News Talk Radio folks in here, he broadcasts on WBBM now, and he wrote a piece 3 years ago about the history of Sports Vision, which timely Eddie Einhorn created for the Chicago White Sox, and how the White Sox were trying to be, I guess, a leader in sports television before everybody else, before even ESPN was broadcasting games, and why Sports Vision ultimately failed, and how the White Sox are still paying the price. So that is as far as my presentation. Thank you so much. If you are on social media, you can follow us on Twitter at Southside Sox, or you can follow me at @SSS_Josh Nelson. And again, we are on Facebook at facebook.com/Southside Sox. And like I said, this is an absolute honor, and please keep up the great work. I love it. I love reading the books. I love reading the research papers about the Chicago White Sox. And yeah, we'd be tickled, not tomorrow, but 5, 10, 15 years from now, if Southside Sox is used as a resource for historical purposes. So thank you guys.
Thanks, this point for writing about the 1917 White Sox.
Honestly, maybe this is something that you guys could help us with. We're always looking for content outside of the daily stuff. Jim and I just because of the nature of the podcast, I really have to focus on what's happening today
Yeah.
and booking guests, and same thing with Jim. But we've always invited writers and authors that if one of you had like a feature story about a historical team about the White Sox, our readers eat that up. Oh my gosh. So when I wrote about Ken Berry,
Yeah.
like people were like, yeah, I remember going to see him at a doubleheader in 1964, and then it became conversations of what it was like to go to the ballpark as kids in the 50s. We have a huge audience for that. Unfortunately, as you guys know, it does take a lot of time to produce something like that. And yeah, if you guys have a feature story about a particular thing, I'd be more than happy to post it on Southside Sox, because that's something that White Sox fans would love to read. So I guess to answer your question, no, I'm not personally doing anything about the 1917 team, but we should. And we even should be talking about, you know, the 1908, 1907, what happened as well, if truly the White Sox and Cubs are going to face each other.
Josh, I'm just going to interrupt here, because Josh is going to have to, like, probably at the break leave because he has another commitment to go to. I think we're doing okay, but party to go to. But after our break, we're going to have a couple of other speakers, and one of the speakers is somebody here, Bruce Allardyce. So I introduced you to him. He easily knows. He is up there as one of the people that knows a lot about the Black Sox scandal. SABR has a Black Sox committee.
Yep.
And Bruce has been incredibly prolific in our newsletter in the last couple of years in terms of uncovering all these, the bios of all these old gamblers and stuff, and just like getting at the core of their study. I mean, that's always, if your fans are ever interested in Black Sox stuff, I mean, not only Bruce, but other people, but there's a much better understanding, and even then, there's a lot that'll never be known. But like you sort of, it's stunning. The actual story, makes the fiction kind of pale in comparison.
Yeah, anything that has to do with the White Sox, we would love to cover it and write about it. I even wonder for like Cubs fans, like with Bleed Coming Blue, I know Al tries in the past. I know the type of work that you guys come up with, but with a lot of Cubs coverage, it's all about now. It's all about today, and I don't blame them because the team's really, really good, and this may be the best era of Cubs baseball, arguably ever. But yeah, I think even like from a White Sox perspective, sometimes you just get wrapped up in the now. I even feel like the 1993 White Sox team gets forgotten. They're gonna have this reunion, and you're gonna have all these fans, and kids are gonna be like, who's Tim Raines? Who's Jack McDowell? Who's Lance Johnson? And like, yeah, the 93 team that won the American League West. Wait a second, the White Sox were the American League West? Like, oh gosh, okay, let's back up the train. Remember when everybody liked Robin Ventura? Yeah, so let's go back to that too. Nobody hated him, and he was well loved. I think it just in baseball media today, like I mentioned, if it's not for you guys covering this and writing about it and talking about it, my fear is it's going to be forgotten. Because I think with media moving so fast today and everybody trying to be the first one to report it, that we hardly ever take a step back and report the history and bring stuff back to the forefront and be like, hey, let's not forget about this. I mean, yeah, the whole Black Sox scandal, the gambling and everything, but as I just mentioned, Eddie Seacoat, he's got a record on the line that Chris Sale's hunting down. People probably don't have any knowledge of who Seacoat is until Kamka tweets something about him. And just having that ability to use a resource like you guys to learn more about a great White Sox player like that and try to bring that to the forefront, I think is really important.
Seacout was the bigger loss than Jackson, amazingly enough, to that team.
I was wondering if you talked to Ken Berry about his role as a consultant on the 8 Man Out movie.
Yes, I did. He said that was a very fun experience. And then he transitioned very quickly to what it was like to be Robin Ventura's manager in '89 for the Birmingham Barons, and how Robin Ventura has never changed as far as his mentality, his mannerisms. That's who Robin is. And after I had that conversation with him, because I was a hothead with Robin Ventura. I think there's a podcast episode, there is, that's #FireRobin, calling for his head and asking for him to be dismissed from the team. But after I had that conversation with Ken Berry, it clicked that, you know, Robin is never going to be a fiery guy because he's never been. They won the championship. They won the Southern League Championship in '89 with Ken Berry as manager and Robin Ventura being the manager. And Berry shared the story that when they won, you know, he's congratulating the team. Robin Ventura picked him up and tossed him into the shower as part of the celebration. And then he tried to make a plea on why he should be the current White Sox bench coach to help Robin Ventura manage the team. So that's how that conversation went. He spoke very little about it and you know, how much fun it was to be on that movie and to be a special consultant. But his heart's still in the game, and for an update, he's writing children's books, Ken Berry is, down in Wichita, Kansas, and he is coaching his granddaughter's softball team. So 8, 9-year-olds probably have no clue who Grandpa Berry is and where he comes from, or that he even played professional baseball and he was quite good at it. But yeah, that's an update on Ken Berry.
At the end of your presentation, you talked about hoping that your site will be, used by historians.
Yep.
I'm of the opinion that newspapers of today's world are dying with less content, less articles, and now it's a charge, and you got to have 14 video ads before you even get to the damn article. If you're
Right. Take a survey.
Yeah.
And read it.
But for you and Jim, what if something crazy happens to you? Who preserves the websites of yours and others like this that provide this, I'll say, daily content that, like you say, people are looking for in reading today? But yeah, say 25 years from now, somebody says, hey, I want to go back and look at 2016. How do we maintain that those records are still going to be there?
That's a great question, and that's why for us it's a big benefit to be part of SB Nation. I think for a lot of fan blogs, bloggers, when I speak to them, the pound the head on the table moment is I spend half my time maintaining a website. We're lucky to be part of SB Nation. They do that for us, and as long as they keep the servers running, they'll be there. But that is a conversation Jim and I have had that he thinks about almost daily. For writing for a newspaper, there are archives. How do you archive a website after it's down? And that's a great point. That's something that we, for the web media, are going to have to figure out on how it's still available in 2040 or 2050.
Well, I'll simply give an academic answer and one that's given by the Library of Congress. There is no guarantee.
No guarantee.
And that is the simple, I'm Gregory Wolf, I edited a lot of books for Sabre. That is in fact, from an academic standpoint, the biggest fear of digital publication. Whereas those who write, I'm one of the heads of the biography project, and where I require all the writers who submit something to work with newspapers and primary sources, we're not sure what will happen to these. And I don't mean just sports, but in my real life I'm a historian, and things that are published digitally, we don't know. There's no guarantee that they'll be there in 20 years from now. There's attempts by the Library of Congress to save themselves in their own digital archives, but how do you have access to that? So there's simply no guarantee. And as much as we would like to say that something like this is so incredibly important, there's no guarantee that in 50 years from now that we'll have access to it. We look at newspapers from the 1860s and 1870s. In 150 years, we don't know if we'll have access to it.
Again, just to throw in there, there's all the, what we consider primary sources, all the memos and letters and things, and I would do historical research on radio in the 1930s, and of course there's lots of things that aren't available, but there are archives of memos that are available. All that's digital now. Who's going to save that, right? If nothing else, they'll delete it because they're worried about a lawsuit.
There's absolutely no guarantee, and I think that it's a very dangerous thing when we look at how is knowledge codified and how it's going to collect and preserve for the future.
That's a great point. Yeah, 'cause like I said, on the net we print it, and wherever that lives, yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I don't know, because if SB Nation gets bought by Yahoo, and Yahoo's like, now we need these servers, and deletes everything.
We can just use the example of the Sporting News
Oh yeah, what happened?
and Baseball Digest. Whereas the sporting news now
Yep.
is part of the paper of record. And now the accessibility of the old editions of Baseball Digest is tied up in litigation.
Yeah.
And it can be tied up in litigation
Forever.
forever. And it's simply, you don't have access to it. And since it's not been digitized, we don't have access to a very important primary source. That's dangerous.
It is dangerous. That is a very good point.
At least we had print then too. You might have the magazine now. I'm told I've got boxes of clutter in the basement. Oh, it should all be thrown away. And I'm like, no, I gotta hang on to it. And then you gotta worry with all the digital stuff down the road. How do you hang on?
Yeah.
Just by the way, Josh, how long have you been involved with Southside Sox?
2008.
Oh, okay, so you were
Commentator,
involved,
and then-
you were there, because Jim Margalis used to.
Margalis, yeah.
Margalis, yeah, he used to publish a book called White Sox Cider. I've got self-published, I have some of those. That's like, for me, that's like, where is it? Well, that lives in print, even though it's like,
And we may have to revisit that. He
Yeah.
has pondered that. It takes, as you guys know, an
That's a lot of
incredible
work.
amount of work.
that's
And
gotta be a
yes,
lot of work, yeah.
And I would have to pick up the slack in order for him to archive. But maybe that is another option as well, is that you do these annuals or you try to archive the stories that we see. From baseball perspectives, they have an annual. Baseball America has a great one as well, where they recap the previous year. But you guys raise a great point. I mean, I would love it in 10 to 15 years, but you're right, realistically, and just the way how media works today, if Yahoo buys Vox Media and they decide we're gonna delete everything in the past, or we're not gonna have these certain fan blogs, then everything we've ever did was lost. With the podcast though, I have those recordings. And at least on the audio side, I can say I have a way to archive that, where I can produce hard media, CDs, and then be able to store those. So some of the conversations that we've had in the past with White Sox personnel, at least would be able to survive. But yeah, the stuff that's written, we don't back it up.
How many guys do you have writing, how many people, I should say, people do you have writing for your?
So Jim's the top. Patrick Nolan, who's our, he's an auditor. He's great with numbers, obviously. He's our Saber metric guy, so he does a lot of analytics. He writes. Steve Peters does the breaking news, and Larry writes everything about as far as the minor leagues for us and prospects. So that's 4 right now, and it's a lot of work.
That's
and,
a lot.
And Jim is always looking for talent to help pick up the slack, because he'd love to have a life during the regular season. It can be quite tough sometimes. As a matter of fact, his girlfriend is graduating. She's getting her doctorate today, so he wasn't able to recap the game. So somebody else will be filling in for him. But, currently, it's 4. So, any other questions? Thank you guys so
Thank you.
much. This was great.